Hello and welcome everyone. So excited to see everyone joining us for Artifact's session on Unsung Heroes in STEAM. And so we are going to begin our program, and as people are rolling in and joining us, I see that we still have a few people joining the call. I'm just going to go through some housekeeping. Please go ahead and post a greeting in the chat and let us know where you're joining from this evening or afternoon or morning. We were just talking about where our furthest participant might be joining from, and I saw some colleagues joining from Guam, which is very exciting. So go ahead and let us know where you're joining from, and I'd just like to let everyone know that you have been muted upon entry. That's to help us control our sound. We are going to be using the chat throughout the program. So get yourself comfortable, make sure the chat is open, and go ahead and test that out now. Would also like to let everyone know that we have enabled the closed caption. So that is available to you. And also a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. And if you need, Emmy is going to go ahead and post some instructions. Okay, thank you, Emmy, for posting instructions about the closed caption. So it's so wonderful to see everyone here. As you gather, please be sure to take some materials for drawing this evening, maybe some paper and pencils. And, uh, and I'd like to begin by introducing the Artifact team and my colleagues that are joining me this evening. So welcome everyone. If you've been on these sessions before, you've probably seen me. I'm Tony Guglielmo, Director of Artifact, and I am joining you from Santa Monica, California. I've been in the position of leading Artifact for the last 2 years, but have a long relationship with the initiative and actually with the Milken Family Foundation. And very excited to be able to deliver this online professional development session to everyone far and wide. So I'd like to introduce my colleagues that are on the call with me this evening. Joining me from Santa Monica are Emmy Mata and Connor Walden, and they're going to say a quick hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emmy. I'm one of the program coordinators with Artifact, based here in Los Angeles, but originally from Colorado. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. I'm so excited for today's session, and I'm here in the chat if you need anything.
And hello, everybody. My name is Connor. I'm also a program coordinator here with Team Artifact in Los Angeles. I'll be working the tech today. Yeah, just so excited to see everybody here and excited for what Jen has to share with us.
Great. Thank you, Emmy and Connor. And Emmy is going to be monitoring the chat as we go through the program. She's posting some links there. Would like everyone to know that this meeting is being recorded. You'll receive a recording as well as some follow-up resources, including the lesson plan. Also want to introduce our founder, Mr. Lowell Milken. And it's Mr. Lowell Milken is the founder of the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes, which was founded in 2007, and also Artifact, which is an initiative that began in 2016. And it's Mr. Lowell Milken's vision for strengthening communities through education and innovation that makes this program possible. He's not on the call this evening, but this program is very close to his heart, and so just want to acknowledge our founder. And also would like to acknowledge all of our ambassadors that are joining. So this year we have 34 ambassadors joining us from across the nation. The Artifact Ambassadors is an online visual arts fellowship program that runs throughout the school year, and ambassadors participate in these modules, and they also bring the stories of the unsung heroes and Artifact practice into their classrooms and communities. So welcome to all of our ambassadors. I see several of you on the call this evening. All right, so I'd like to just begin very quickly with an overview of Artifact for those of you that are new. Artifact invites educators and their students to explore the inspiring and diverse stories of unsung heroes from history through the visual arts. And we look at these unsung heroes as role models, and we're going to talk about that a little bit this evening, and just how to work with these stories, especially these STEAM unsung heroes this evening. And Artifact offers, as part of its programs, an annual student art competition, which we will hear about at the end of this call. Professional development, which I just mentioned, is the Ambassadors Fellowship, and also this call that you're on this evening, and exhibitions as well. And want to explain a little bit more about the unsung heroes. I know you've heard that term before. You've seen it when you signed up for this program. So Artifact focuses on the stories of individuals from history as role models who have taken extraordinary actions that have made a positive and profound impact in the course of history. They've taken actions that have improved the lives of others and society, altruistic actions, um, and have demonstrated altruistic traits such as courage, compassion, sacrifice, and conviction. We have a list of a growing list of unsung heroes that we're going to take a look at this evening, and there's about 130 on that list that we work with at the center that Artifact focuses on across different disciplines. So just want to give a quick definition of the unsung heroes, and we're going to dive into it a little bit more deeply as we go through the program. And so now I'd like to introduce our instructor for the evening, Jennifer Braverman. I'm so excited that Jen is leading this session. Jen is an amazing visual arts teacher. She teaches at Maple Shade High School in New Jersey, where she's been teaching AP visual arts for 17 years. And Jen is the perfect person to teach this module. She really embodies in her own teaching the qualities of esteemed philosophy, which she's going to unpack for us. She is also the author of educational coloring books. I know some of you have those coloring books. We're going to be sharing about that. Exceptionally creative and energetic. In 2021, Jen was an LMC Fellow, and just really a strong advocate, and someone who has been involved with Artifact as well for a long time. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to our instructor, Jen Braverman, now, and she's going to share a little bit more about her background and take it away.
Thank you so much, Tony and Artifact. I'm really excited to be here. I've been involved, as was mentioned, for several years with the Artifact, and I come from a lot of different lenses. As a high school teacher, I've implemented this in my classroom for several years, but I teach, like I said, AP Studio Art, drawing and painting, digital mixed media. I've also had experience teaching middle school students. I've done a lot of class advising and worked with students outside of the classroom. One of the big themes in my personal art and my really like ideology as an educator is that art really is stronger when it's community based, and to have those connections. And when you look at STEAM, it's all about the intersections of different layers, the way we think, the way everything builds on itself. So I'm really excited to I view this as facilitating a conversation between you, giving you resources, and I think we will learn a lot from each other. We're going to go through the lesson plan, do a couple exercises that can be directly turnkeyed into your classroom as soon as tomorrow, or even in other spaces, because I know we have people beyond classroom educators in here. So I'm excited. Let's jump in. Okay. This is the agenda. We're going to talk about, of course, the main thing is the shift from STEM to STEAM, because even though we all as educators and as artists know that art is everywhere, but for a while it was labeled as STEM without the A, the art. We'll do a little bit about brain breaks. We're going to think about thinking, talk about the project, Unsung Heroes, collaborations. We're going to do a lot. Are we ready? Are we excited? Oh, I saw some movement. So we're going to jump right in.
Jen and I just wanted to mention to everyone, Jen has prepared an amazing and robust lesson plan. The link is in the chat, and the agenda that we just saw follows step by step through the lesson plan. So if you're able to go to the chat, download that lesson plan or open it up, and we'll go step by step as Jen goes through her agenda, and you can follow and make notes on the lesson plan.
Yes. All right, so let's start with step one. Why do we need art? Let's see why. Okay, of course it's going to be a very visual presentation because I am a visual learner and a visual educator. When you talk about STEAM and science, technology, engineering, art, math, all of these things are based on learning as an artist and design, graphic design concepts, thinking differently. Who has seen this before and why is this innovative? You can throw your notes in the chat or any thoughts on why this particular watermelon is a little different than a traditional watermelon. Why is this innovative?
All right, so let's go ahead and post some rapid fire responses in the chat, and we can quickly take a look at those.
Yep, I'm checking it. We've
Okay, good ones. Easy to stack, easy to store, easy to pack, eye-catching for sure. I've never seen a cube as a fruit. Someone has wrote less food waste with the shape. That's interesting to fit into a small Japanese refrigerator. Uh, Cheaper to transport, won't roll around, unique shape. These are great ideas.
Yeah. And it looks like that one of the first comments already kind of knows the basis of it as it is from Japan. This was actually created for an art gallery from a design perspective in 1978, and it was let's look at the way watermelon is grown instead of the traditional round watermelon, which is difficult to stack, takes up space. There's more waste. There's transportation. There's a lot of issues. They redesigned it and created this square form. It ended up becoming a little bit more of a it was more expensive and not as popular as it may have been expected, but it was really interesting. And it's just, even when it's not as successful, quote unquote, we'll talk about sometimes process is even more important than the product, right? There was a lot of learning and that gets people to think differently. All right. So when you look at the transition from STEM to STEAM, some people will say that the shift started in the early 21st century, and really in 2010, the Rhode Island School of Design, RISD, pushed for the A integration. I know many people that have been in education a long time that have already realized that art is the core of how we need to think differently, how we need to connect. And when I look at STEAM, this is my general kind of acronym, and I want you to look at this and see if you agree with it or if you would add things differently. My acronym is called the RACERS, STEAM RACERS. So it's all the elements are the rise of innovation and creativity, the advocacy for holistic education, cultural and economic shifts, recognition of the design process. I spoke a little bit about how design thinking is really important, and then support from the industry leaders. When you look at that acronym, those of you especially a little bit more involved in STEAM, would you change anything? Would you add something? What are your thoughts? And we have Tony put in the chat, we have more about this in lesson plan on page 3.
Well, Jen, I was gonna say the advocacy for holistic education is really what I think about most when we were chatting about STEAM.
We see someone loves the industry support component. Excellent. And in the bold, of course, we have the human aspect. There's a lot here. All right, we'll keep going. And if there's anything that you want to revisit or you want more information, there is more in the lesson plan, and I'm a great resource to continue this conversation post this training. Okay, let's keep going. Now, this section is a little bit longer. I'm going to give you a couple of activities, and these are things that I use in the classroom to break up students' thinking, because one of the key elements of STEAM is we need to think about how we think, right, and think differently. And going through that process, mistakes are okay. Pushing back against ourselves is okay. All of those things will allow us to grow a little bit more as, as greater innovators. So we're going to think about thinking. These visuals and then the resource you're going to have that goes with it is local to me. So I teach in New Jersey, Maple Shade, as was mentioned, which is very close to Philadelphia. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so one of the main wonderful, I've been very fortunate to be near the Franklin Institute. I saw some of you that were East Coast that may be nearby. The Franklin Institute has a phenomenal exhibition where you can actually walk through the brain, which is pretty cool. So if you can do that in person, of course, that's great. If not, they have a visual and videos where you can experience that. And it's great for students to see what the brain looks like, how the neural connections are, and it's a really interesting interactive resource. We can keep going. So I've done the Stroop challenge many times. I don't know if any of you were on this chat last year. So we did do this because it's a great way to talk about congruent and incongruent and the way that our brain processes things. All this is student art as well. So in the visuals that I provide, you'll see these are all some of my AP and student creations. We do a lot with the brain, the beginning of drawing. The Stroop challenge is an activity that some of you may have done before, but it's going to cause a little bit of tension in your brain and in your thought process. So who's ready for a challenge? I see it. Okay, I saw some hands. Okay, I'm ready. So we're gonna try something new right now. We're going to do 2 experiments. The first, it's going to be easier on your brain. Okay, all we're going to do is say the color of the word as fast as you can. Test number 1. We'll zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see, and we're going to follow Connor's mouse. We'll go across the way, starting with red. So we're going to say the color of the word.
Wait, so Connor can unmute everyone, and we'll just all try to say it out loud.
Yeah, go right out loud.
Red,
ready?
Green,
Red,
green,
blue,
yellow,
pink,
orange,
blue,
green,
blue,
white, green, yellow, orange, blue, white, brown,
red,
blue,
green,
pink,
yellow,
yellow, green,
blue.
blue, red.
Okay. And it's when we do it as a group, it gets a little more challenging, but it was easy, right? It was, we know red is red. We've grown up, our brain have been conditioned to say red is red. So now I want you to go as fast as we can. We're going to do the same activity. Say the color of the word. We're going to try to go even faster. Okay. Ready, set, as fast as we can. Try to keep up with me. Ready?
green,
Yellow,
white,
pink, yellow, pink,
pink, orange,
blue,
blue, red, yellow, green,
green,
Blue steam.
red, pink,
brown,
yellow,
pink, green, orange, red, blue, orange, red,
green.
Hey.
That's orange.
Okay, so what happened there? Anybody want to share what it was like to do that?
The text and the colors were non-congruent.
And what did what happened? What was the
I
reaction?
started reading instead. I started reading the word. I started reading the word instead of the color.
Exactly. And so you're exactly what you said. It was, and so your brain is a little bit tired because it can't keep up, and you're having the interference, right? So that activity is really great. It's got a lot more resources on this website, which Emmy just added into the chat. And now what I have students do, because again, this is setting the stage for thinking differently, thinking collaboratively, thinking the way we think before we even get into the Unsung Hero project or even other projects you might do. So let's look at the next slide. All right, I'm going to now have you right now in real time in 3 minutes, you're going to do your own Stroop effect. And I have students do this. Since we're tight on time, I'm only going to say around 5 images, but I do typically 10 images. Students need to pick a topic and switch the labels. So an example, students, sometimes they will do, I've had them do flags, country flags, and they change the labels. They do sports, and a basketball is labeled as a soccer. et cetera, et cetera. Food, you draw a strawberry, but strawberry's labeled as a banana. It has to be in the same category. If I drew a car and I labeled the tire as a donut, it's not going to work, right? So pick any category, any skill, however you want to draw that, and we're just going to put a quick 3-minute timer, and I want you to try to create your own Stroop effect. I've also had students do this digitally. I've seen a lot of cool stuff. Ready? We're going to draw. All right. So one of the things, one of the tips is about using a timer. Actually, during COVID, I became much more of a structured teacher because we had to be, right? Especially when you were teaching virtually and teaching art and painting and drawing online to students was a totally different than my typical wheelhouse, right? So one of the shifts I made that I still use is timers for some of these warm-up activities because I think it creates a sense of urgency while not necessarily sacrificing quality. And I'm sure you've all seen this. Sometimes you give students this long amount of time that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to up the quality. So for quick activities, I think a timer really helps. Okay, so would anyone like to share theirs out? You can hold it up or just talk about what you created. Oh, I see some of these screens. Oh, cool. And I see someone put theirs in the chat.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, these look great. The
Oh, all right.
alphabet.
Wow, that's fabulous,
Ooh.
Sarah.
Let me see that one
Great.
larger.
Oh, I can see Rebecca. It's
Oh,
holding
cool.
hers up. Also, Jennifer. Great. Austin, Stacy. Oh, awesome. Stevie with the letters.
These are
These are
great.
great.
These are so great. And I did forget to mention, I do have this year in particular, I have a lot of multi-language learners. So of course you need to adjust. I let students do this assignment in whatever their preferred language, their native language sometimes. It is a good activity. So this can be done, this can be adjusted as well and should be adjusted. These are great. And again, it gets people thinking differently. It's a great warm-up activity for multiple lessons. I had a couple people, oh good, keep adding them to the chat so we can see. These are great. Very cool. And I had a couple people joining a little bit late. So just a quick recap of what we've done. We've set the framework for where STEAM, when the STEM became STEAM, what are the elements or components of STEAM. And then we just started briefly talking about the brain and how it's really important to think about the brain, think about thinking, and then we did this short Stroop activity. And I've had many teachers use this in other subjects as well. All right. Any other thoughts or questions before we keep going? The other thing, again, this is just a snapshot of a bigger topic. I'm really passionate about this, and I think that it's something that we all realize in 1 hour, you're not going to have every single resource, but it's a great launch point for a more in-depth unit, which is why the lesson plan is really important. So if we want to even, maybe we could drop the lesson plan again in case somebody came later.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing these, Jen. They really get to the point of like, just for a moment, thinking about how we process information, which is just, always happening on automatic, but like it slows us down for a moment to think about the visual and the cognitive and the verbal and the written. So yeah, great.
Okay, let's keep going. All right, another activity. You may have seen visuals like this. This is technically called, it's called a bidirectional optical illusion. So when you look at this, your brain again is playing a couple tricks on you, perhaps. What do you see? Why are these interesting visuals? A profile and a front view. Exactly. Sometimes people have trouble seeing one view or the other. So it's the same concept as Rubens vase with the two profiles, right, in the negative and positive space. But your eye clings to the contour of the edge, and it's simultaneously two images, but you can't see both at the same time. Again, the way the brain works. So you're looking at it, I see a profile. And then when you look at it closer and you look at the negative space, you're like, oh, wait, it's actually a face cut out. And there are several other examples of this online that you can see. There are some people that provide Photoshop lessons if you want to do this digitally, but it's another great quick launch point to say, let's look at things differently. Let's talk about perception versus reality and the way people see and experience things differently from an intersectional perspective. Okay. Next slide. All right, we're going to show a short video. In my classroom, I always start the classes with artists of the day. It's very important that students see themselves represented in my classroom in some capacity. So each class period, I find different modern artists. And also, I think it's interesting for students to connect with living artists they can see on Instagram or online that they can actually reach out to and connect with that are doing amazing things. One of the first artists I always show is Rajasena from the Netherlands because she's a really interesting artist and has a unique perspective on art. So I want you to hear directly from her. We're going to watch a short clip about Rajasena.
I started drawing with both my hands around 4 years ago. And I started drawing with both my hands because I didn't draw for a while because I had some health issues. and I wanted to find a way to draw a bit faster and also practice in a creative way. I came up with the idea to just work on multiple drawings at a time, and then suddenly I had the idea to also draw with both my hands. I did an interview a few years ago, and the reporter joked that maybe in the future I would be able to draw with a toe. I made a joke that maybe I could also draw with both my feet, and I didn't really think about it much. And then suddenly people kept asking me if I could do it or if I could try it, and then one day I tried it. I started drawing 2 eyes, and then I found out I could do that, and then I started drawing the 6 portraits. When I work on multiple drawings at the same time, it takes a long time. It can take up to 20 hours, 40 hours or more. I constantly switch my focus back and forth between all the drawings. So then I draw a little with my feet, and then I draw with my hands again. I constantly switch my focus between all the drawings, and I put on an audiobook, and I don't really think too much about it. I have the reference pictures on the screen in front of me, so I just can look at it. I really think it's important with arts to don't really think about the results, but just enjoy the process of drawing and painting.
Okay, and if you're look at the lesson plan on page 4, one of the things that we have added for you is under classroom discussion. When you show this video, which is actually a quadridextrous artist, but on some of the labels it says ambidextrous, but it talks about the concept of ambidextrous innovation, and that's a really interesting concept. It says the ability to handle both short and long-term innovation goals as a key element of a successful product. This process balances exploration and efficiency, and focuses on incremental updates. So I think that's an interesting thing, a launch or discussion point to talk about with your students. I love the way she says the process, right? Enjoy the process. And we stress that too, because sometimes this assignment is so, it's exciting. Artifact is an amazing contest, but of course, not every student is going to be at a prize winning level. That doesn't mean they're not getting the prize and the reward of the deep and rich connection with the unsung heroes. So the process is really important. Innovation is really important. And this builds, I know some of you may have been on the other lesson plan that focus on blind contour drawings. A lot of this is very similar. It's all can be built into the same unit. I just think she's really interesting, and students really connect with her. And I see some people do bilateral drawing with kids. Students are really receptive to it. Has anyone else done this assignment or bilateral drawings with students, or drawing with their non-traditional hand? A couple people. And how receptive have your students been to that exercise and activity? Usually I think it's pretty well received in the classroom because it is non-traditional way to create. And then this builds on to the next person. Oh, we did it with a blind contour drawing. Perfect. Low stress, they enjoyed it. We try it loosely with challenges to compete. Blind contour drawing, it's great to do it with that exercise as well. So building her in, and then of course, the Association of the Mouth and Foot Painting Artists is another great resource to look at. In New Jersey, where I teach, we are state mandated to have disability inclusive curriculum. So we're always, and not just in art, in every, throughout the curriculum. So one of the things is we want to talk about ableism and how also artists create in non-traditional techniques. This is a great resource to look through. So continuing to build that out. Okay, so the extension activity we have with this is connecting the dots. This continues to build the concept of we are all connected. Engineers, mathematicians, scientists, artists, they see things differently, technology experts. They see things differently, and they can make dots and points come together into a greater image. This activity can also be used as an English assignment in a lot of different ways. But basically, the concept is you start with an idea and a word. You then create that word as line art create points, and then take those points and make a statement. So we're going to look at this backwards, right? So you see just a bunch of dots, and then when you see these words, you're still not quite able to connect what is the meaning. So we get to the final slide. And when you look at this, the main word is art, right? And it says, we are connecting the dots to create a beautiful world. And you could do this with any word that really is important to you. You could use this with a hero. You could do the word math, science, here, unsung hero, anything that you want to spell out, and then create it in terms of lines, points, and then create a statement with it. This is, again, just an extra bonus modification or extension. As educators, one of the things I really am always looking for is what can I use to fill this extra 7 minutes, right? My lesson's done, or we're in between lessons, or it's a half day because there's an assembly, or X, Y, and Z, you had a fire drill, some unusual circumstance. It's a great filler that still has meaning, and it connects the dots, and it's a creative brainstorming activity, helping us think outside the box. Okay. Any questions? Okay, we're going to keep going. Great. So now we're going to focus on the assignment, right? The topic, specifically discovering unsung heroes that are specific to the STEAM focus. So let's look. First, we're going to define unsung heroes. These are provided from the Lowell Milken Center, and it's a great starting point. You could even take one of these words, right, for the connecting point. You could take the word valor and look through and say, you know, who represents valor? What does it mean to have valor? And then heroic actions. Are there anything you would add to this list when you think of an unsung hero in terms of heroic traits or actions? Anything that we're missing or that you would want to add? Okay, I think these are great. Okay. This is another snapshot. What's interesting is the website and the resources also have subcategories, right? So you have a category, not just necessarily for science, you have a medicine category as well. And you can see environmental science. There's so many great resources, and this is where you would kind of start with looking through the heroes that have been vetted, the heroes for the assignment. And it's in the chat as well if you want to browse along with the list of unsung heroes as well. So you just a caveat, you have to submit to the contest, you have to pick somebody from this list, right? I have had students and I've seen other educators that kind of extend this assignment and they'll do community unsung heroes, which is excellent. Again, making those connections, building community. But for the ARTEFFECT specific contest, you want to use heroes on this list, or you have to use heroes on this list, even though it's great to connect with the community as well. So step one, we have to look through the list. Okay. So coloring is really interesting. There's a lot of research and debate about coloring, but I have been passionate about coloring books since 2006. I created my first coloring book, the first one that you see, Women Coloring the World, in 2006. And at the time, the reason I created it was I felt that there was not a lot of resources to inspire young girls for what role model. There weren't a lot of role model resources for young girls. The coloring books were all princesses and fairy tales and these kind of repeated stereotypical images. So I created my own international coloring book where I researched women around the world. I illustrated them and accompanied them with a little bit of a description. So that was in 2006. I redid it in 2010. And as I worked on that, as an educator, I was also realizing that children didn't have role models. I wanted children to have role models that were their age, right? Kids seeing kids doing amazing things, not somebody necessarily that is, you know, deep into adulthood, but someone, a peer of theirs. So I created a second book called Courageous Children Coloring the World. This was before and what's interesting about that book was I had international people, and I actually included one of my current students. Now the student's 28 years old, but at the time she started this big Operation Purple Sky, an anti-bullying organization, which was really cool, on her own as a 7th grader. So I started with these 2 books, and then I'll go to we'll talk a little bit about why it's important and mindful to color, but let's look at the specific Lowell Milken Center books. And then when I was a fellow, I said, I spoke with the center and said, why don't we make these heroes more accessible to all ages, and let's do a coloring book. So I did picked some of the heroes and did the same format. I just created it for the center. And it was really an interesting full circle moment for me, because this last book that I did, which was last year, was women as well. It was Courageous Women. So kind of 2006 to 2024, focusing on unsung heroes. And now, of course, we have so many more resources. You can go online, you can get thousands of coloring pages, but I wanted real life people. And the act of coloring, looking at the images, looking at the contour of the person that you're studying and learning about, it's a great way, it's a great snapshot to start for my students. And I actually use them, even at AP level, I use these books as a great launching point. This is just some shots of my students. So first thing, the book, draw what, some of them, of course, we're drawing portraits in their own style. One of the things we're going to discuss is we want to move beyond portraits, right? Portraits are wonderful. Of course, there's a lot of technical talent, but we want to get to the essence of why is this person, what did they do to change the world through science, through math, through science and math and engineering, through art? How did they make their mark? How were they courageous? How did they change the world? So they look at these books. Some of them were coloring. Some of them started to write poetry, pulling out words from the simple text of the coloring book. There's a lot you can do, and coloring books can be used in a more mature way. I think it's underused.
Jen, I just want to jump in here for a second, because there's a concept that we've talked about in some of these sessions, historical empathy, which is
Yes.
relating, we had an I am poem worksheet in our character and values session, and Emmy can put that link in there, but it's really looking at a historical figure and trying to connect. And we did a blind contour drawing that you mentioned, but I feel like the coloring book is another useful tool for building that bridge to the historical figure, because it's really inviting that focused sort of personal concentration, and really getting to know the outlines of that person's face, and just kind of like their expression and stuff. So wanted to underscore that point.
And that's explained a little more on page 9 of the lesson plan as well. And also, we have a resource that talks about the brain benefits of coloring books as well. It's just another great resource. So sketch, color, connect, get that historical empathy. We want students to really feel the whole purpose of this assignment, this artifact movement, really, which is what I call it. The artifact movement is to have students feel that they can make a difference and see people making a difference and the mark, and feeling that connection, not just I'm reading a history book, feeling that the depth with the people. Okay. Oh, good. We're designing coloring books in class right now. I love that. So the last page of what in my original coloring books, the ones I did, like I said, 2006 and 2010, were based on, the last page was blank. And I said, where do you see yourself? Draw yourself as a hero. And I did that in the other books as well, because I think it's important for students to see themselves as a hero. But I also created these trading cards. So when you have the book, if you look at it, you can photocopy and look at those back pages and treat them like trading cards. And also is a great way to sort out who are your whatever theme you pick. Of course, we're picking STEAM, but who are your scientists? Who are your technology experts? Who are your mathematicians? And who are your science and math leaders? And it's a great way to sort, to learn about, to communicate. I've had people print these out, color them, take notes on the back of them. It leads to more opportunities and engagement. So I know a lot of you do have this book. Really use that trading card option in your classes.
And the worksheet for the trading cards is actually part of the lesson plan. Oh, thanks, Emmy. Gimme has put the
Oh,
link there
perfect.
for us.
Perfect. Okay. So now we're going to talk about speed meets. Again, creating that sense of urgency, working quickly. Students don't necessarily need that much time to do the initial research. We want that initial connection. And then of course they're going to do the deeper dive. But how do you have a list of 130 some unsung heroes, or however many heroes in each category, and you want students to pare it down? It can be overwhelming. So this is a great activity to kind of sort through and get to their top person that they want to illustrate. So these are worksheets I created. You can take pieces of it, adapt it, screenshot, anything that I've created for this, please feel free to use as you see fit. But this is creating a visual, of course, saying science, technology, engineering, art, math. We look at it this way. We're separating them, but we also want to look at the intersections and the connections. So students will, let's go to the next slide. They're going to look through, think about the intersections, how many unsung heroes exhibit multiple lenses of STEAM. They're going to write down the heroes. They can use this resource. My students do most of their work in their sketchbook, but whatever your dynamic works for you, you could photocopy these and say, here's my artists, here's my mathematicians, or you could just list them. You could do miniature drawings, but you're starting to sort through these heroes.
What I really like about this activity, Jen, is the overlap, because when we're talking about like what an unsung hero did that was innovative or that expressed a certain quality that is what you've set up for the STEAM framework, creativity or collaboration or inquiry, or the ambidextrous innovation, it it's a nice way to layer and scaffold what you've already kind of presented with the character traits, the values, the STEAM framework into a sorting exercise, and to really see that holistic, that the person is holistic across
Yes.
these categories, and we're not just, which is of course what you were trying, the point that you made in your
Yes.
step one.
Absolutely. So as they're continuing to narrow down and work through who interests them and identifying their scientists, their technology, their overlap, then eventually they're going to have 5 top people. So in the next slide, I think, oh, is that in the
Next slide.
Yep. So going from this, they have their top people. You also, if you have someone that's multiple things, if they're an engineering and a mathematician, you can draw it for both categories, maybe start to narrow it down. In the end, it's going to be their top choice. And in the worksheets, you're going to see that we have space for thumbnail sketches. I know a lot of you are familiar with thumbnail sketches. You're going to pick a person, pick your topic, and then start to sketch out ideas. It was interesting. Was talking to the ARTEFFECT team the other day, and I said, at this point, we're really focusing on one person, of course, but it would be interesting down the road if you drew multiple people, if there was a shift or an opportunity to say, hey, these two mathematicians, while they're from different generations, how did their work overlap? Like, how are these heroes connecting to each other?
What I like about this activity, I remember when we were discussing, is the Hall of Influence, because it's not a Hall of Fame. We're really looking at the
Yes.
impact that that person did, and so it's a different way of exhibiting, or choosing or sorting based on their impact or their influence.
Yeah, that language is very intentional because in current culture, right, modern culture, everyone is, not everyone, but there's a concept called Kagoi, kids are growing older, younger, which there's an age compression, and kids and children and youth are obsessed with fame. Fame, what does that even mean, right? We all know Andy Warhol said everyone be famous for 15 minutes. I say recently the quote should be 15 seconds. It's the same concept, but we're like this, right? So I like fame. What is fame? No, we want influence. We want heroes. Okay. Now we have our sketches. It's time for students to create. So let's look through some pieces. These are some of the award winners from last year. This one's incredible. So when you look at this through a STEAM lens, what do you see? What stands out? Anything that really catches your eye about this particular piece of art? Fetus, the embryo, the background. The background's really interesting. Focused observationist. Look at his gaze. The determination on his face. So while there are some pieces we do want to move away, right? There's some interest beyond the portrait. This is not just a straight, flat person looking at you, right? There's so much depth in his gaze, the way he's looking. You feel that intensity, you feel that connection to his discovery and his innovations. Beautiful use of color. I was going to say inquiry and colory. All right, we're going to look through a couple more. These are interesting because one is by an 8th grade student, one is by a 12th grade student, and they're both about the same unsung hero, which I think is really interesting to see because they chose the same person and they took completely different approaches. One uses linear perspective and has actual math written and scribed in it. The other one is more sculptural, and you see things coming out of the book, much more mixed media. And again, you have a whole range, middle school, high school.
And I also wanted to shout out Rosemary Dodson, who's one of our ambassadors this year, who's on the call. I don't know if
Oh, yay!
yay. Don't know if Rosie wants to unmute and tell us anything,
please.
any insights here in the process in supporting her student with this work, completing the square.
Yeah, Moab was really interested in mathematics, and he also really identified with the unsung hero culturally because he came from the same culture. So he wrote in Arabic in the background because he was able to, he can read and write in Arabic as well. And he wanted to base off this idea of the square and where like equations and algebra came from. He was very knowledgeable on it. And so he made a square composition and he wanted to use perspective in it. So he just put a lot of thought into how his composition could add to the storytelling of the piece.
And it involves a lot of sort of mathematical, understanding there that comes through. Cheryl Lunger is also an ambassador this year. She's not on the call this evening, but I wanted to reiterate what Jennifer was just sharing about us. Both of these works, we don't see a portrait, and I think the conceptual elements here are so strong.
And they both literally bring you into the piece, so whether it's through the linear 1-point perspective or the texture and wanting to be into the book. Beautiful. Let's see a couple more examples. When you're looking at this piece, this was by an 11th grade student, colored pencil, watercolor, and acrylic. The use of complementary colors when you have the blue and the orange bouncing off really visually bring you in. Gene Shoemaker is, I was very fortunate. He was one of the people that I illustrated in the first coloring book. And when they had an event in Fort Scott, Kansas, his niece spoke about his influence. And I got to meet her and talk to her a little bit about her uncle, an incredible person. What all of these portraits, if you don't know anything about this person, you're just seeing the art. What can you tell? What are the context or the visual cues? Why is he so interesting? Just looking at this piece of art, what did he do?
Go ahead and put some responses in the chat, or go ahead and unmute if you'd like to just share out
where he came from versus what he accomplished. Discover a comet, explorer, spaceman. Yeah, you all see the layer of the story. I think that's we want these pieces to speak for themselves. We'll talk a little bit briefly about the impact statement. It's very important for students to write about their impact statement and how they connect. But visually, we want to look at these pieces and be brought in as the audience, learn about these people. We want everyone to know about the unsung heroes beyond the classroom. Okay, we have a couple more. This one is by a 6th grade student. You can see the Kandinsky inspiration in the background. They write about that. And you're looking at obviously the composition. If you don't know anything about this person, again, this hero, what do you think? What do you know about the hero looking at their art? or this piece of art?
Go ahead and put some responses in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and share out if you'd like to comment. I was going to say observation, which I also
Mhm.
said for Visions of Light, are the first work.
Creative thinker, yes. Scientist. Also not a traditional portrait. You see all of these, you looking at the way you're following her gaze, the way she's studying and exploring. Good. All right. For time, I'm just going to keep going because there's a couple other things I want to get to. Okay. I like to show this piece for several reasons. Jackie Orms is an amazing cartoonist and a civil rights hero. The piece that's more realistic was one of the people that was awarded through ARTEFFECT, was the best in show. The other one is actually one of my students. And I showed that because they didn't place, but I think it's still really important. My student was very invested in this artist. She did a yarn portrait of her at the bottom. It's hard to see the way it was photographed, but she did that. That was explored through a modern artist who does portraits of Black icons in yarn. So she took that style, that aesthetic of that artist, really looked at his work, created a portrait of Jackie Orms in yarn, and then wanted her to be drawing herself. And the student in particular really likes pop art, put that style in, and then I wanted her to make a doll, but here we are, right? Teachers can only get so far. But she found a doll and repurposed the box of the doll to make it look. So there's a lot of pieces here. And while the student didn't rank in the contest, the student still really dived deep and learned a lot about the artist, and it still was a huge success. And I really, really want to push process over product, not necessarily over product, but process is very important as well. So don't lose that. Doing this contest has so much value beyond just a polished piece of finished art.
I also want to jump in, Jen. Sorry, there's so many points to make, but
Yes,
I really
please.
liked how we were all calling out in the previous set the qualities of the artworks that relate to like what someone in the field of STEAM dubs: observation, inquiry, creativity, connections,
Yes.
explore. And we had all those thoughts. And in this category, we have Jackie Orms, who's in the arts, which is the A in STEAM that we've been talking about. So I think it's also a nice example here to talk about how artists are innovators. What did Jackie Orms do that was innovative in her comic strips? And to really look at how in the arts we're also innovators, to tie back to your your intro about the A in STEAM here. So it's nice to show
Yes.
some examples of not just those STEM, but the artists in the Unsung Heroes list as well.
Yes. Okay, we'll keep going. So we'll talk a little bit about the project criteria and evaluation. It's broken into 3 sections. You have the creative interpretation, the aesthetic value, and the impact paper. And we mentioned briefly about the impact paper, but this is where students get to speak about how they felt that this hero impacted them, their connections, and they can go in depth about why that person matters, how they changed the world, and how they've felt influenced by them. This is a great rubric to work with. When I critique students' work, a lot of times I do many different activities. I also try to bring in other people. I have a lot of, I'm fortunate to be in a small town where a lot of people are still local. So I have some alumni coming in that have done things, they critique. I have local gallery people come in at times, and it's really helpful to have that more voices. I think critiquing is a really important part of all art process. But having this rubric helps guide what that critique should look like if they want to enter the contest. And I also encourage in progress critiques too, which I'm sure a lot of you do, where it's not just, let's not wait till the end. Let's look at, you're 20% done. Let's look at where we are. If you're 50% done. Let's look at where we are. So we can be more innovative. We can problem solve together, all of those STEAM concepts. Okay. Critique and tweak. So this is where we talk about it and we make shifts as needed. There are 10 main categories. This is a lot of information, and so this, I would encourage you to look at this more in depth later, but these are the categories for the critique sections: identity and representation, symbolism and metaphor, narrative and storytelling, emotional impact, the cultural historical context, etc. So we'll keep going because I want to, it's a lot. You don't need to use every single, this is also on page 8 of the lesson plan. You might just pick one section to do a deep critique, but these are some things to think about and to ask your students. How does the artwork visually represent the unsung hero? Symbolism and metaphor. How does the artist use metaphorical elements to convey the unsung hero's significance? I think the metaphor and symbolism is a really important piece of this assignment. Impact and legacy, audience engagement, reflection and action. This is dense, but it's really great resource. Maybe 5 of these questions you want to do one day. You can do this voice to voice. I've also done critiques where I've listed the questions, and I do like a musical critique where we have, again, with the timers, I have music on. Okay, when the music stops, you're going to sit in front of this piece of art. Okay, you have 2 minutes, answer question number 1, and then the students write their opinion. They have to sign their initials. Timer's up, rotate, find another one. And that is also gives a little movement, because critiquing can sometimes be dry and dense if you're just talking the whole period. But if you're like, we're going to talk about it, music, get up, go, they're circling, they're looking at other people's art, music stops, find another seat. It's a really great way to keep critiques a little more engaging, but still have the depth in there. Okay. You didn't have a ton of time to look at it, but it is on your lesson plan as well. Any category that you feel really passionate about, you think it's most compelling? Do you think any of the questions are too difficult? And would you add any questions?
Maybe we could go back one slide.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then we'll take a look at it. And Emmy, if you want to post these questions in the chat.
Yep, they're in the chat. Perfect.
Oh, sounds great. If anyone wants to share what category is most compelling, what questions might students struggle with, or what questions might you want to add, I know that you on the fly, you can go ahead and put the response in the chat, or go ahead and unmute yourself.
It might take you the whole time to read through everything.
I like
Yeah.
that you pointed out narrative and storytelling. A lot of the artworks that we see about the unsung heroes lean in that direction. So I feel like that might be not what they struggle with, but perhaps in response to number 2, what might be most accessible, perhaps for students to look at. We did a little bit of that, like just looking at, what's the story, what comes across most quickly in the narrative here.
My middle schoolers might struggle the most with emotional impact. That's I can see that. I think it is hard. It's hard sometimes, and perfectionist students sometimes might get in a rut. It's hard to push them to think a little bit more conceptual, but that's the goal. I like the innovation and techniques. Now, also, while this is specific to STEAM, a lot of these things can apply to other topics as well. Context questions. So you all know your students best, and this is a great starting point to pick and pull what might work for you. Okay. Any other questions? Before we get into the Q&A session, one thing, a perspective I like to add is, of course, we all know the popular Picasso quote, which I might butcher right now, but it's all about, how the problem is, what is it? It's about children, how adults are, help me out. Somebody help me out. It's like the creativity, children are all creative. Children are all artists. The problem is when you grow up, you start to lose some of
Every
that
child is an
that-
artist from Denise.
There it
Oh,
is. Thank you.
thank you.
Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. And I've seen variations of that. And I think that that's true in a lot of ways. It's harder because we get a lot more pressure on ourselves. I have triplet 3-year-olds, brand new 3-year-olds. I was just telling her, because they just had a birthday. And one of my science teacher friends always said that young children are scientists from their perspective. Because everything they do is a guess and it's a hypothesis and it's an experiment. And seeing 3 people go through the same exact activities, completely different, experimenting completely differently, just from a different perspective, is so fascinating because it's all experimenting. And the younger you are, you're trying new things, and they're not afraid to try new things and explore and be curious. As people get older, that curiosity is still there, the desire to be innovative, to think outside the box, but there's so many other external pressures that as teachers, we want to try as much as we can to let that inner child, that inner creativity and experimenting come out.
Well, great. Let's see if there's any questions. I just want to see if I missed anything because for some reason can't see everything in the chat. Okay.
So someone said their high school students are struggling with symbolism, looking at how art elements and everyday objects can represent their hero or apply to their art design. That made me think of one of the resources in the Franklin Institute website that was there. It was, I forget what it was called, but it was all about when you look at something and you see faces. It's so interesting. Like, you see a door or you see pictures and you automatically see 2 eyes and a mouth and you start to see faces. There's a science behind that. That might be a good resource.
Also, when I was going to jump in, the context, Katie, that you're looking at everyday objects is also a nice starting point for looking at impact, and maybe that's like another way in to the story. But these are great. Well, we have just a limited amount of time, so I want to just see if there's anyone that has any other questions for Jen. Well, we have Jen, and I'm gonna just quickly take us through a wrap up. So maybe I'll quickly go through that. Definitely excellent
Good.
resources. Thank you so much, Jen, for these excellent resources. There is so much in this lesson that you've given us in terms of thinking about what STEAM is and what that means in terms of holistic education, taking us through a step-by-step process and modeling some activities for thinking about having students understand how their brain thinks and how just understanding there as a starting point can lead to innovation and connecting with the stories of the unsung heroes in deeper ways using symbolism. You've given us a nice process for sorting through your excellent worksheet with the sorting through the heroes, understanding their impact, the overlap and the connections there. So, and then the critiquing, being able to have an iterative process. And something that you and I talked about is like the mistakes are part of the learning process, the process is part of as meaningful as the product. And so really appreciate all these resources. Invite everyone to be sure they've got the lesson plan to download that. And I just want to remind everyone about ARTEFFECT's competition and the larger resources that we have available for you. So if we could move forward, Connor, on the slides, and we'll just quickly take a look at some of those for those of you that are new. We have a student art competition that is open through April 27th of 2025, where students go ahead and pick an unsung hero and creatively interpret their story. And the ARTEFFECT competition is open to students in grades 6 through 9 worldwide, and accepts media, 2D and 3D media, and has, if we go to the next slide, multiple prize categories. Here's overview. This is also on the website, the main page to the website. And this is what I just said. Choose the hero from the list, review the guidelines and rules. In addition to the artwork, students write an impact statement where they talk about their connection to the unsung hero that's meaningful, that unsung hero's impact, and how they want to share out their work. And then the portal is an online submission portal. On the next slide, there's a poster that you can download for your students. And then here is for your classroom and your students, and here is the timeline. So the competition closes April 27th, and we are aiming to announce the finalists here June 2nd. There is a judging panel and the judges review the artworks according to the criteria that Jen showed us earlier on the judging rubric. And then we have prizes across varied categories this year. We're excited to introduce a category of spotlight prizes for 3D and sculpture, as well as large format, which is anything greater than 24 by 36. There are also a spotlight prize for selected unsung heroes that you'll see here, and trying to give some recognition to these particular unsung heroes. So each year, that list varies, and so students might be interested in there. And there's some STEAM heroes on that list, and then our top award prizes as well. And you can review the FAQs. I saw that Emmy put that in the chat, which has a little bit more information about the prizes and the rules for the prizes. Also want to let everyone know that we have been running these series of online modules. Of course, our ambassadors know this throughout the year, and there is an upcoming module on February 26th, art making and design for social impact. So everyone is invited to that. Our ambassadors are pre-registered, and otherwise you can go to this link and go ahead and sign up. Also, if you go to this link that's posted here, you can find the previous lesson plans if you haven't been able to access those, or watch previous session recordings. And some additional resources if you'd like to bring Artifact into your classroom and community. We have, in addition to those lesson plans, just our introduction lesson plan, which is a very overview of Unsung Heroes, great for the competition. An educator resource guide, which we've just put together, that pulls some of the worksheets and the activities from the other lesson plans into sort of a quick start guide. And then our Artifact video, that's an overview video about students and teachers working with Artifact. That might be a nice classroom resource. And this is it for now. We have just 4 minutes. So if in case there's any questions, I wanted to acknowledge Rebecca, who is on the call. I think I saw Rebecca's name here. Rebecca Wilkinson, because Rebecca is one of our ambassadors this year, and was sharing out that she is also doing trading cards as part of her capstone project.
Great.
So
That's great.
Yeah, and I was so inspired by hearing about her capstone project, which sounds amazing. So if Rebecca wants to share out. Hello, Rebecca. Yes. And
Well, actually, my cards they can be trading cards, but they also can be used in games to sort of get the kids familiar with the people. So I'm like making up different games for across curriculum. So, but
that's great.
yeah, tell us what you're designing on the card.
So on the card, I went through the heroes and I basically did a blurb, that just gave like 4 points of information about each one. Put a category at the top, included their image, and then on the back I included a QR code to connect so they could go to the website to look more up about them. So yeah, so it's a lot of information in a little card.
Have the students started using those cards yet?
I start using them next week.
Oh, okay. Well, keep us posted. We're excited to hear how that is working out in your classroom. And thank you for sharing. All right. Well, we only have 2 more minutes. Emmy, did I miss any questions?
In the chat, there's someone, Denise Webb added, there's an artist, Heather Hansen, says that who uses kinetic drawings using both arms or whole body, and then a YouTube video that was dropped. And this is one of my favorite parts about presenting, is just connecting. And, I just learning about a new artist today, right now, how exciting this is. I just think every resource that we do as educators and artists I'm really passionate about being collaborative. So I hope that we stay connected and that you all take down my email and reach out if you have any questions, because I'm happy to join your journey in any way.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen, again, for this fabulous lesson plan. So robust, lots to think about in terms of STEAM, artistic processes, and projects for Artifact. And really appreciate that. We did get a question. We're posting the link to a certificate of participation for those of you that are joining. Please feel free to use that certificate wherever it is accepted. So, you know, we documents your time on this call, and wherever you can use that in your district or state or community is, please go ahead and do that. And we have 1 minute, so I'm just gonna have a big send off to everyone. Thank you again for joining us. I know this is like a very action-packed January so far. Lots
Yeah.
happening and with the fires here, extreme weather, and lots going on the national scene. So really appreciate everyone taking the time to gather with us in this community. Thank you so much. We're gonna unmute so we can all say a collective goodbye. You'll be receiving the recording as well as the lesson plan. And if you have any questions that come up, just write us at our email, artifact@lowmilgan.org, and we will get back to you. So thanks, everyone. Let's unmute Connor, and we can all say a nice goodbye. And thank you again, Jen.
Thank you, everyone, for your time
Night,
and
everybody.
participation.
Goodbye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.